Wake up your morning in a brand new way with the positive people, places, events, and things in and around your neighborhood and around the world. No matter where you live, your mornings are about to get better. It's the refreshing way to start your day. No doom or gloom, just bright sunshine no matter what the weather. Metro Magazine with Bonnie McDaniel. Inspiring, informative, intelligent, Ion. Positively the best way to start your morning. I'm Bonnie McDaniel and welcome to Metro Magazine. We have a very fascinating woman with us this morning. As a matter of fact, you're going to find her very intriguing. Sam Horn is the founder of the Intrigue Agency, and you're going to see why we chose her as an amazing woman. Sam, welcome to Metro Magazine.
Thanks so much, Bonnie. I've been looking forward to our interview today.
Well, thank you. You know, I met you, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. And the thing that fascinated me or intrigued me the most about you is that I came to you and you asked me a question, and within less than 5 minutes, you gave me a mission to go out and change something that I had been working on. And I find that unusual in terms of how, first of all, how well you listen and how easily you assess people's situations. So rather than talk right now about the work that you're doing, I want people to know who is Sam Horn. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your background, things like where did you grow up, your educational background, because there's a lot that went into making Sam Horn. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Southern California in a small town. We had more horses than people.
Okay.
I literally grew up on a horse.
You're a California girl, okay.
You know, and a reporter once asked where I got my confidence. And I thought about it, and I told him on the back of a horse. You know, because when we were 6 and 7, we would go out riding all day, and if your bridle breaks, FIO, figure it out. You know, this is before cell phones, Bonnie. You know, so it's like your horse runs away with you, figure it out, and you really learn to be resourceful.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for growing up in that small town where we had horses instead of bikes, and we went everywhere. I went to the library on my horse. But what it did at a very early age, it gave me independence, it gave me a feeling of mastery, and it gave me a great love of being able to get up and go out in the world and make it up.
You know, it's very interesting you talking about horses and that being a very large part of your background. I know that my daughter had a friend in high school, and she was part of the 4-H club. And one of her service projects was to work with disabled kids. And they used horses to train them. And I asked her, I said, so what do you do when you are training? You know, why do you use a horse? And some of the elements, some of the things you talked about were some of the very reasons why. Another experience involving horses was, I know you remember the movie The Horse Whisperer?
Of course.
Which came from actually Miraval Spa out in Tucson, Arizona. And they use horses with people who are having emotional issues. Because horses can sense. So talk about that a little bit more.
You know, you are right. It really is a collaboration. And one of the most important things about riding is that there is a freedom that emerges when the horse knows you know what you're doing. Because just like in life, a horse will test you in the beginning. Well, let's see, can I eat some grass? And one of the wisest things I was ever told about parenting is never let your kids do once what you don't want them to do at all. So see, like if you're just going to get in the car and drive a mile to a soccer game, and your kids say, well, we don't have to put on our safety belt, it's just a back road, it's just a mile, and you think we make an exception to the rule, we've just opened up Pandora's box because we let them do once what we didn't want them to do at all. And it's the same, see, you learn all these lessons with a horse, because if you think I'll just let him graze once, well then the rest of the time on that horse, he's going to be trying to grab some grass here and there. If you're loping, you know, which is the Western word for cantering and so forth, and your horse decides to slow down and trot, and you think, oh, it's a hot day, I'll let the horse do it. Well, then that horse is always going to do that. So it's a wonderful forum for learning life's lessons about clarity about what you want. And I used to jump horses too, and there's this lovely phrase that why will a horse jump over an obstacle when it can't even see on the other side? And you know why a horse will do that?
Yeah.
The rider throws her heart over the fence and the horse
Oh
will
my
follow.
gosh.
So I've been throwing my heart over the fence all my life.
Okay, and you know what, and it shows in your work. Now, are you an only child, or were there, how many siblings?
I'm the baby, so I got an older brother and sister.
Okay, your parents, it's interesting that first of all, the environment you grew up in, but also there must have been a lot of leeway given, if you will. You said you were the youngest, so they were probably over, that over parenting by the time you got there. But there must have been something about your parents where there was insight or knowledge to know that, you know what, this is a great way to teach Sam about life.
Bonnie, you're so right. It is, when I think about my upbringing, I had a friend who's a psychologist once, and one of the first questions she asked every client is, what is something you remember your parents saying to you? Because see, what comes top of mind has shaped you your entire life. If what comes top to mind is, I'm sorry I ever had you, you'll never amount to anything, you're so lazy, that's going to shape you the rest of your life, because you're impressionable. We believe what the significant others tell us early in that life. Do you know what came to mind when she asked me that?
Yeah.
Do the right thing.
Wow.
For example, it was like a cold winter night and we had rabbits in the backyard, and I would say, do I have to go out and feed the rabbits? Can I do it in the morning? And they would not tell me, yes, you have to go feed the rabbits. Guess what they would say?
Do the right thing.
Because see, it's a Socratic way of teaching us
right.
on our own when we're tempted to do what's easy, when we're tempted to do, it's like, no, they're in my DNA is at those crossroad moments, do the right thing.
Wow, what an amazing lesson. Gosh, I wish I'd known you when my children were smaller because I could have saved myself a lot of conversation. I mean, very concise, to the point of what it is that they were ultimately looking for you to do.
Yes.
And it's interesting now, knowing you now and listening to what your parents taught you, it makes a lot of sense why you're on the path you're on. Now, talk about your education. So you grew up in California. I guess you lived there all of your life?
Well, not yet.
Oh, I mean all of your life when you were
Bad joke.
That was good though.
Low-hanging fruit, Bonnie. I couldn't help myself.
That was pretty good. So you spent your formative years in California.
Yes. Okay. So, and here is, I think one of the books that I am working on is called Serendestiny.
Yes, yes.
And so my first recollection of a decision made at a crucial crossroads that really set my serendestiny in motion was when I was graduating from high school and choosing what I was going to study in college.
Okay.
And all my teachers were telling me, you have to use your mind, you have to be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer. Bonnie, I didn't want to be a doctor or a lawyer. Okay. I'd grown up playing tennis, riding horses, swimming competitively, and I wanted to study, ready for this? Recreation administration. And I remember
why?
Because I believed that being active as a family, as a community, as an individual is a way of celebrating life. And I did not think it was trivial. I did not think it was just something we did in our spare time. I think it's an integral part of life. And at that time I was already a swim coach. I was already running recreation departments and stuff. However, I remember an uncle said, what, are you going to study underwater basket weaving or something? I mean, they really thought it was a joke career.
Right, right.
And my dad, thank heaven for my dad, because he gave me Goethe's quote, or W.H. Murray, that said that boldness has genius in it. And when you have two options and you cannot make up your mind between two of them, always pick the bolder of the two. So
interesting.
Isn't that? So see, it was the obvious option was to do what everyone was saying, the lawyer, the doctor route. But my instincts didn't want to do that. And thank heaven I trusted my instincts in spite of what everyone else was saying except my dad and my mom. I studied recreation administration. The week after I graduated with my degree, I got a call from Sea Pines Plantation on Hilton Head Island, which was like the #1 at that point and the pioneering destination resort, to come back and help run their executive fitness program. and then I ended up working for Rod Laver, and it set up these serendestiny stepping stones.
Wow. That is so interesting, because we were talking off camera before we started this interview, and I talking about going with the thing that is most bold. And it's interesting that when you do that, you really do, I believe, wind up in the space you're supposed to. And you've just kind of confirmed our earlier conversation that really is the direction I need to go. Very, very interesting. So you went, you majored in recreation. Administration, and then you went to Hilton Head. So tell me what that was like when you were there. Well, what were some of the things that you remember during that experience?
I love that question. And what I discovered was, when you grow up in a small town, you see these movie stars, you see these famous athletes, and you just assume they have it all together and that they have this perfect life. Well, here I am rubbing elbows with these people, putting on national tennis camps for these people. It was really a shock to me to find out that many of them were shy or self-conscious or unhappy. And so I started looking around for people who had this quiet core of confidence that they carried with them wherever they went. You know, what is it that contributes to that, where our self-esteem is not situational? It does not depend on where we are or who we're with. It's something that we carry with us wherever we go. And I ended up writing a book about that. And one of my enduring lessons of Hilton Head is I know, not just intellectually, I know in my gut that being rich and famous is not the Holy Grail. Because I've met rich and famous people. There are some that are happy. They're the exception and not the rule.
Interesting, interesting. And so you spent how many years there?
I spent 4 years there.
Okay, and then what was it like? I mean, what did you do following that?
See, this is what happens when you listen to your instincts, and when you're good at what you do, is you don't have to plan out your life. The universe meets you halfway. Because then I got a phone call from World Championship Tennis asking if I would come to Washington, D.C. and help open up the Regency Racket Club.
Wow.
Which at that point was the first country club for racket sports. We had squash and racquetball and indoor and outdoor tennis. And we had kind of a Camelot there. I mean, I got to play tennis at the White House, and you know, my whole goal was I wanted people to be able to come and hang there with their family and have lunch, and then decide to pick up some mixed doubles in the afternoon, and kind of a cheers of a tennis club. And it was really a lovely experience for a couple of years.
It's interesting you say that because I'm thinking about a conversation I had with a gentleman just yesterday, and I can't remember the word he used. It was not serendipity, but it was, the gist of it was, you're never any place that you're not supposed to be based upon where you're supposed to be.
You know, Bonnie, it is, if people get, you know, hopefully they get several things out of our talk today. If there's one in particular, have you read Gavin DeBaker's book, The Gift of Fear, by any chance?
No, I haven't.
You know,
that's another one. Gavin DeBaker, and the book is called The Gift of Fear. And I actually don't read other people's books in my genre, because I kind of think it makes me derivative. Like, I wake up at 3 a.m. and I've got a great idea, but it's not my idea. It's Stephen Covey's idea. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. However, I saw him interviewed on CBS Sunday Morning, and I'll always remember something he said, because he said that he is a high-profile security consultant, and if someone has been like kidnapped, he will debrief them afterwards. And guess what the first question is he asks? Did you have any warning? Guess what they all say? I knew something was wrong. Yeah. But see, then, Bonnie, they look around and they intellectually undermine it. They say, well, it's broad daylight, nothing could happen. I've got a security detail with me. You know, I'm in a bulletproof SUV. And my light bulb went off, and I thought, if we have instincts that warn us when something's going to go wrong, don't we have instincts that alert us when something's going to go right? Wow. See, if we sense dissonance, can't we also sense resonance? So in alignment with what you just said, I think part of our responsibility is to pay more attention to our instincts. If we get a bad vibe around somebody, we may not be able to pinpoint why. Head the other direction. You know, it's interesting. I will tell you that the biggest messes I've gotten myself into over the course of my life have been, I've always had a warning. I knew. And I think one of the things that quote unquote smart people do is we try to intellectualize everything. Because instinct, I mean, you can put your arms around that. We try to intellectualize and say, oh, it's not as bad as it seemed. Oh, it's not really that, it's this. And you are absolutely right.
See, kind of I'm asking everyone who's watching to ask themselves this question. Has their gut ever been wrong?
It never, you know what? It never is.
No.
It never is.
Every time we override our instincts, we're rationalizing. However, our instincts are collating everything they sense. There are things wrong, you know, and it's like when we listen to them, here's the good news. When we honor our instincts, things just get better and better and better because we're aligning with people we're compatible with, who are in integrity. We're picking projects that are a match for our skills and talents that put the light on in our eyes. So this is not airy-fairy, this is not new agey, this is not, no, this is this unique gift that we have received that we so often ignore. And from this day forward, if we are more alert to it and if we honor it, then we will reap the rewards of it.
Wow, wow. So you came and you helped to open up the tennis Regency. Okay. And you got to play tennis at the White House, and you made all of these wonderful connections. Back then, I'm curious, were you aware of what was going on with Sam and your life and the path that was being paved? Did it occur to you, or were you just living? And I'm asking this question because I say to young people that I mentor, they ask me, how did you get over there? How did you get over there? I said, you know, one of the things that I never do is I never chase people or things.
Interesting.
I said, I focus on my work. And interestingly enough, everything that I need usually appears. It shows up at my front door. I never have to go looking for it. And it's interesting, the fact that you said earlier, you were talking about how things just kind of came about. And I can't wait to read your new book, by the way, because I am so fascinated by that. But were you aware at that time of what was going on in your life and how things were being plotted for you?
Kierkegaard said, we can only understand life backwards, but we must live it forwards. So you see how in the midst of a situation, often we cannot connect the dots, right? The dots haven't shown up yet. We can only connect the dots after the fact, and then we see how it all contributed and connected with each other. So I'll answer the question, which is why in the moment, sometimes when nothing is clear, the only thing we can count on are our instincts, because the evidence may not all be there. So kind of a long answer to your question. After a couple years there, my instincts were saying that I really loved what I did. I did not want my life's work to be putting on tennis tournaments and selling tennis warm-ups, you know? Here's what I did, is I got a van and I drove across Canada. And I worked at the Calgary Stampede, you know, and I went down to California State Fair and I worked there, and I went back up to Lake Louise because I loved it so much. And then I came back, and if Sandy Bramer is watching this, Sandy Bramer ran something called Open University years ago in Washington, D.C. And we had about 200 different classes, and everything from how to foxtrot to how to build your own house, and we had raft trips and so forth. And I pitched myself to Sandy. I said, I'd love to work for you, and kind of what I'll do is I'll read the Washington Post, and like, here's the world's expert on Go, so I'll contact him, we'll put on a program. Here's someone who sailed around the world, contact her, we'll put on a program.
Wow.
And so all I knew, once again, like with recreation, I wanted to do something that put the light on in my eyes. I wanted to do something that was creative, where I had autonomy to make something happen, where I knew it added value. And thank heaven to Sandy Bramer and Open University. One day I was reading the Washington Post, and I saw the word concentration 6 times on the front page of the sports section. Chrissy Everett said it was why she'd been able to win the US Open. In fact, they said, did the planes flying overhead bother you? And she said,
Concentration.
What planes?
Oh, right. She was concentrating on what she was doing.
Yeah. And I thought,
wow.
We all wish we could concentrate better. I've never seen any books on this topic. No one ever teaches us how to do this.
Wow.
And I thought, I'm not going to farm this out. I'm going to put together a program. And so I interviewed athletes and executives and artists, and I put on a program, and at the end, 16 people came up and said, please come speak to our corporation or our convention, and that launched my speaking career.
You know, it's interesting, and I'm still hearing almost the very first thing you said to me when I was asking about your parents and what did you gain, and you said your dad gave you some advice, and I see and listening to you as you're progressing in your story that you continue to hear what he said. Because that's bold. You get in your car and you just start. Well, oh my gosh.
You know, back to the horses, right?
Yeah,
Here's context. Here's and I tell you, after people watch this interview, I hope they go online to YouTube and they put ducks blowing in the wind. Because here's going to be this 43-second clip. So I don't care how busy you are, you can watch a 43-second clip. And here's a mama duck with her little ducklings, and they're waddling across this plaza. Here comes this gust of wind, knocks them, you know what, over tea kettle.
Right, okay.
Well, you can't help but laugh. However, guess what? They brush themselves off and off they march. You know what? And what that made me think, so many of us, we wait for our ducks to be in a row before we go. So you have to know all the answers before we start. We have to be certain that we've thought through every angle before we begin. And guess what? If we have to know before we go, we never go.
Where do you think you got, because the one thing that is resonating in my head over and over again and listening to your story, a lot of trust, a lot of confidence. There seems to be a sense of, I trust life in you, that comes through in everything so far that I've heard in your story. Where do you think that comes from?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I can say this. I'm beating a dead horse. I'm sorry, Beth. I'm like, I keep going back to horses though.
Right.
And here's why. Once again, it's like you're on top. I mean, we started off with a big old draft horse, Elko, you know, probably weighed almost 2,000 pounds, you know. And here's a 6-year-old girl on top of a 2,000-pound horse. You fall off, you're out in the middle of nowhere. You have to figure it out. So see, it instills in you a belief that no matter what happens, you can be resourceful and you can figure it out. Instead of being afraid, instead of focusing on doubts and fears. In a small town, if you focus on doubts and fears, you're going nowhere.
Yeah, you're gonna get stuck
so
there.
If you're adventurous, and as you say, if you choose to focus on, I'm not sure how this is going to turn out, but I won't know until I go. Well, then you get up. Do we have time for another story? Can I tell you another story?
Absolutely.
Because once again, I'm enjoying this with you, and I'm hoping that people who might be watching are also thinking about their lives and thinking about, is there something they want to try? And they've been focusing on all the reasons it won't work, or they really don't have a PhD, or they don't have a degree, or they've never done this before. All the reasons why not to. And boy, I hope as a result of our talk today, they'll start focusing on all the reasons they want to, you know? Isn't it wonderful living in Washington, D.C.? And I read in the Washington Post that Thomas Friedman was going to be at the National Press Club. And so I put it on my calendar because I respected, his mind and his books, and I wanted to go hear him speak. Well, the day come, I'd done all-day consults. I was running on empty. All I wanted to do was go upstairs, read the paper, relax. And you can't make this stuff up, Bonnie. Louis L'Amour said, "You can't learn anything from experiences you're not having."
Wow.
And I thought, if I go upstairs and just kick back, a year from now, what will I remember? Nothing. It's like, get up and go. Because I was thinking about the traffic. I was thinking about the parking. I was thinking about how tired I was. When I switched to what will it matter a year from now? Whether I went to the National Press Club and had this experience, or whether I just kicked back that evening. So you can't make this up. After the event, a woman, Carol Sargent, came up to me and she said, "You're Sam Horn, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." She said, are you a member of the National Press Club? And I said, well, I'm not a journalist. She said, but you've written nonfiction books. And did you know if you've written nonfiction books and someone sponsors you, you can be a member and I'll sponsor you. So
wow.
She sponsored me into the National Press Club. I've had a chance to, we put on these dinners at the National Press Club. I've been part of the book festival at the National Press Club.
Wow.
Once again, the little girl on the horse growing up in the middle of nowhere. Now to walk down those halls, to put your hand on a picture of Nelson Mandela, who's spoken at the National Press Club. All the presidents have spoken there. You know, to be walking in the halls of history, that's what we get to reap when we get up and out of the house and think about what we would like instead of all the reasons why, it's going to be tough to find parking.
You know, it's interesting because I was sharing with you the Women Are Talking event we had in 2013 and me partnering with, or AT&T partnering with this initiative. And it's funny how that came about. I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, wow, she is so smart, because I was given an invitation with, I guess, maybe a dozen other women by AT&T to come to a luncheon on a Saturday to be recognized as one of the women of influence in the DC area.
Yeah.
I woke up, this is in September, I think it was. I woke up and I said, oh darn, I could go and do some cleaning up in my garden or whatever. I was making all the excuses, and I did go out in the garden early that morning and wound up with a headache because my allergies were bothering me. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm not gonna go. I think it was around 1 o'clock they were having the luncheon. I went in to lie down for a little bit, and something in the, talk about that instinct, you need to go, because I was like, they can send me a commendation in the mail. I don't really need to go to this. I go to the luncheon. Long story short, of all the people in the room, I wind up sitting across from the woman who is actually, and I didn't know any of these people, who was actually the person who said to me once she read my bio, tell me about Women Are Talking. And when I told her what it was and what my vision was for it, she said, I want to partner with you.
It's, and I'm going to tweet this after our program, because it just occurred to me while I was listening to what you were saying. Our instincts have our best interest at heart.
Ah, I like that.
Right?
Tweet it.
You know,
wow.
and to piggyback on that is that I had a chance to speak recently for an event of women business owners, and this is a participative event. So we would talk about how their context story, and then they would have a chance to talk with a partner about it and how they could use it in their business and so forth. And I was going out, and I was then I would hear, that's a great story, would you share it with the group? Bonnie, I was amazed. Almost across the board, they say, oh no, I couldn't. I've only been doing this 4 months. It's like, and I'm thinking, you are taking yourselves out of the game.
Right.
And some of them are doing it for what they think are the right reasons. Oh, there's nothing special about this. You know, however, are you an athlete?
No, I used to play tennis.
Okay.
Yeah, not professionally, obviously, but yeah.
Well, then all our people who are watching understand that when we're an athlete, when the game's on the line, there's two kinds of people. There's the kind of people who say, don't give me the ball.
Right.
And there's the kind of people who say, give me the ball.
Yeah.
I think as women, it is our responsibility to be give me the ball kind of person.
And you know, I'm not an athlete, but I'm the person, if there's something to get done, I'll be the first one to volunteer to do it. I do have that personality. I don't know if that's something that you get out of being an athlete, but.
And I almost think we represent our genre, our gender, every time we're in public. Because I just did a HuffPo article about this, and it was like, don't just lean in, step up.
Right.
Because it's like, for example, this woman, and if she's watching, I'm honoring her because of what she did. She's a former pro golfer. She put on an event on the rooftop of a DC office building. The PGA commissioner was there. You know, there were some senators there and so forth.
I love it.
Initially, though, she said, well, I couldn't tell that story because I've only been doing it for 4 months.
Wow.
And see, one of the wisest things I've learned, Bonnie, is our strength taken to an extreme is our Achilles heel. So see, that was coming
Interesting. Say that again.
Our strength taken to an extreme is our Achilles heel.
Okay.
Because she's coming from humility. you know, she doesn't want to misrepresent herself. She was thinking, oh, if I get up and it's going to look like I've been doing this for a long time and I haven't, so I'm not going to get up and speak. You know, it's kindness taken to an extreme is our Achilles heel. You know, if we're kind to someone who's cruel to us, not good, right? Being funny is a wonderful quality. If we have to be funny all the time, then it becomes our Achilles heel.
Okay.
So what I've noticed in many women is we've been taught not to brag or boast, and so we are humble, ready, to a fault. And we take ourselves out of the game. I said, wait a minute, you're a pro golfer, you're an athlete, you're saying don't give me the ball. What you sharing the story of what you accomplished and sharing it with everyone in the room isn't coming from arrogance, it's coming from service. Because see, then everyone in the room will be going, oh, you mean maybe I could be putting on an event in my industry. Maybe I could be sponsoring something that would attract some decision makers that would help fund a cause or something like that. So one of the most important things I've learned along the way is that when we get up and when we share our lessons learned, or when we share our recommendations or support of others, we create a rising tide raising all women. You know what I call that? RAW, R-A-W, raising all women.
I love that.
Every time we speak up, you know, instead of stepping, you know, step up instead of step back. Every time we speak up instead of, well, not me. We're not just serving everyone in the room. We're modeling for everyone in the room. They're a lot more likely to do it as well. And we're creating this raising all women, rising tide where all women are more likely to do it because we set the example.
I want to go back to something you said at the outset of the interview. You were saying that the messages that our parents give us when we're small, they kind of define our actions or define who we are later in life. And this is not meant as a negative, but I'm thinking about something you said. I think it had a lot to do with the way women saw themselves perhaps during my grandmother's era. And I lived with my grandmother when I was small. And I was a really smart kid. And so I would come home and I would like, look, I got another A to my grandmother. And she would say, that's nice, but don't get a big head. And what that did to me was, and I knew she meant well, and this was the way, again, during her era, the way women saw themselves. But what that did to me was, as I was growing up, I was smart, and some people thought I looked okay or whatever. I would always be the one who would try to slink into the background. And I fought against what was natural for me, which was to lead. And it took me a long time before I felt comfortable in the leadership role. I would not step up, even if I knew the answer. I would slink back. So parents, if you're watching out there, and it's not going to, you know, what you just said, it's not about being boastful or thinking you know everything. It's saying that at this moment, I'm the person that should be speaking up. I should be in this position. So you're a very, very knowledgeable woman, Sam Horn. And I imagine that in this hour that we're going to be talking, that there is no way we can really capture everything. So what I'm going to do right now is we're going to shift a little bit, because I want to talk a lot about more about some of the books that you've written and some of the speaking and that you do around the world. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come right back with more Metro Magazine.
Up to 40% of businesses never recover after experiencing a major disaster. Make a plan at ready.gov/business.
When you throw away money on wasted electricity, you're throwing away everything you could have bought with it. Saving energy saves you money. When you throw away money on wasted electricity, you're throwing away everything you could have bought with it. Saving energy saves you money.
Oh, sweetheart. Gonna give you a hand?
No thanks, Dad. I got it.
Okay. I'm gonna go fix the lamp in your room.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of children in foster care who will take you just as you are.
And we're back with more Metro Magazine. If you're just joining us, you have been missing a treat because we've been talking to the intriguing Sam Horn. And when we went to break, we were talking about some of the, I'm trying to remember now, some of the
bragging and boasting.
The bragging and boasting that we women think we do. Oh, right, we were talking about my situation or my experience where as a child.
Don't get a big head.
Don't get a big head. And that kind of messed with me for a number of years. And of course, I finally decided that, you know what, if a big head is what I have, then I need to own it. But anyway, let's talk about that a little bit more because it really does hold a lot of women back when they think they have a big head or that they're being boastful. What's some advice would you give women?
First, you're so right, and this is one of the benefits of women are talking, is that if that was told by you, by a grandmother you loved, and she's the authority on the subject, then we accept that as gospel. And it's only when we talk with other people that we get to see it in perspective, and we think, you know, she meant well, and that's what was said back then. However, taken to an extreme, it has its consequences again, right? We don't want to go around bragging and boasting all the time. However, if we never speak up about what we can bring to the table or have to offer, we're taking ourselves out of the game. And one of my favorite stories about that is I'm very lucky to have two sons. And
I met one of your sons, and he just thinks his mom rocks, which you do.
Well, it's mutual. and so this is Tom, and they both went to Virginia Tech. And now both boys grew up in Maui, and we would go for walk and rolls at night. I would walk, and they would ride their skateboards or their big wheels or their bikes or something, and we would pluck a plumeria off a tree, put it on our pillow so we had sweet dreams. So one time when Tom was about 8, it was just an incredible starry night. And so I pointed up to the sky, and I said, Tom, what do you want to do when you grow up? And he pointed back up at the sky, and he said, something to do with up there.
Wow.
And a week before he graduated from Virginia Tech with a degree in physics, math, aerospace engineering, and astronomy, I didn't help him with his homework. There is an announcement from NASA on the job board to work in mission control in Houston at Johnson Space Center. And so he filled out the application, and he sent it to me, and he said, what do you think? And I said, Tom, it's brilliant, except for one thing. You forgot to put in that you and your collegiate team won the international mission to put a manned mission on Mars. Guess what he said? But Mom, that would be bragging.
Wow, and it came from a guy, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And see, I said, Tom, it's put yourself in the shoes of the decision maker. They probably have hundreds, maybe thousands of applications, and everybody has a 4.0 GPA. Everyone has 4 majors. Everyone has extracurricular activities. You know, you're going to blend into the crowd. You don't want to blend into the crowd. You want to break out of the crowd.
Out of it. Okay.
So it is your responsibility to give the decision makers one thing that separates you from the crowd, that makes you pop out of the crowd. You know, it's not bragging if you've done it. You and your team did this.
So you're stating fact in essence.
That's right. So you have a responsibility to bring it to their attention so they can decide, this is relevant to us. We haven't seen this before. This is worth an interview. Guess what Tom is doing these days?
Is that his job?
He wakes up every single day. He is 28 years old, and Tom is in charge of the environment for the International Space Station.
Wow.
Every morning he wakes up, he goes to work at Mission Control, and he looks around and he says, Mom, I still get chicken skin, which is what we say in Hawaii for goosebumps, you know? And
oh my goodness.
Here's the thing, Bonnie. What if he hadn't put that on his resume?
Yeah, he probably would have blended in with everybody else.
He may never have gotten a call.
Wow.
And how many people watching this program, you know, send out a resume or even give an interview or a pitch or a proposal, and they just say this, and they never put themselves in the shoes of the decision maker and say, what is that decision maker seeing all the time? That's not going to help me get this job or win this funds for my nonprofit or something. No, what is one thing I've done that can contribute to their organization or that validates why I deserve this money? The one thing that'll help me be, one of a kind instead of one of many.
Now, I know this is something you do in your coaching profession, your coaching part of your business. What advice would you give to a young woman who is struggling with that? Because I wish I had known you, many years ago, like when I graduated from college. I really wish I had met a Sam Horn, which is why I think talking about what some of the things that I do, why I mentor other young women, because I want them to recognize their strengths early on so that they can be propelled to do what they were called to do in life. What advice would you give a young woman? Is coaching something that she should look at doing immediately, or should she go out there and have some experiences and then once she decides, okay, I want to be over here, then get the coaching? At what point do you think coaching is important?
I think coaching with the right coach and someone who has a good track record and that's a real match for you can absolutely be a win.
How do you choose the right coach?
Well, here's a first step. I actually think two steps before that, before we even seek a coach. Number one is to start keeping your antenna up for who you really admire and respect. And so when you see a woman like an Edie Frazier, when you see a woman like a Denise Brousseau, when you see a woman like Amy Millman of Springboard that's helped women get $6.2 billion in funding. That's Robin Chase of Zipcar, Gail Goodman of Constant Contact, Edie Frazier, who's very big in STEM right now. When you see people like this, you walk up to them and the first words out of your mouth are, I know you're busy, and may I have 2 minutes of your time. It's the first thing. I know you're busy, and may I have 2 minutes of your time. The next is, what is one piece of advice you would give to a young woman who really wants to contribute in the world? And then you actually write it down. Because if no one will ever be offended if you write down what they say, they think, oh my gosh, she's actually listening to me and taking me seriously.
And people want to be listened to.
Now there's a 3A of seeking a mentor. And the first A is ask. Because I cannot tell you how many times people will go up to that person and they'll talk, but they won't ask anything. Here's what I want to do, and I'm doing this and this and this, and they never have time to ask a question. So ask. The second is act. I remember Jack Canfield of Chicken Soup and the Soul and I were talking about this one time. And we talked about how many times people come up to us and ask for advice. We never hear from them again.
Follow-up is important, yeah.
So act on it and then get back in touch with the person to let them know how their advice led to this result and how much you appreciate it. That is quid pro quo. Because so often young women will say, well, I can't walk up to a senator, woman senator. I can't walk up to the CEO of a business. Yes, you can. Yeah. If you ask for 2 minutes of their time, if you write it down, if you take action on it, and if you get back in touch to let them know how their advice led to this result and how much you can walk up to the President of the United States. And if you do that, you make it a win-win. And even before you work with a coach, do you see how you get to, in once again, in an equitable way, you get to give people an opportunity to be an expert and to share their experience in a way that's going to add value for others who wouldn't want to do that.
That feedback, I think, is so important. And I remember a couple of years ago, you suggested that I do something, and it worked. And I remember saying to myself, she's not going to know it worked if I don't send her a note to say, first of all, thank you. And then to say, you were absolutely right, and here's what I did. I think that's so important that we do that. Now, we're going to talk about, because you have some very fascinating, intriguing book titles. The very first, the one that really caught my eye, Tung Fu. Talk about that.
Well, so Tung Fu is how to deal with difficult people without becoming one yourself.
Wow, I need to read that like yesterday.
what Tung Fu is, it's very pragmatic ways. It's everything we wish we'd been taught in school. We're taught math. I mean, we're taught reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? We're not taught what to say when someone calls us a name. We're not taught what to say when we have to give bad news. We're not taught what to say when someone we care about is not taking care of themselves. You know, no one teaches us that. So a lot of times we don't say anything if we don't know what to say.
Right.
So Tung Fu gives here's exactly what to say when people are complaining. Here's what to say when people are arguing. You know, here's what to do when someone's getting on your last nerve. So can I share one of my favorite stories of that? Okay. It is, would you like to know what to say when you don't know what to say?
Okay.
First, I'm going to tell you what not to say. If someone makes an accusation, you women are so emotional.
Okay.
You know what not to do?
What?
Don't deny it or defend it. Because if you say, we're not emotional,
right,
now you are.
You have just confirmed what was said. Yeah.
So someone says, you don't care about your customers. We do too care about your customers.
Right.
You're a terrible supervisor. I love my employees. Do you see how anytime someone makes an accusation and we deny it or defend it, we react to it, especially if we use the word I. You know, now don't get mad. I am not mad. So guess what you say instead? From now on, you don't know what to say. Guess what you say?
I don't know.
4 words.
Okay.
What do you mean? Or what makes
Because
you
then
say
you're
that?
putting it back.
Or why do you think that? You know, because, for example, I'm doing a book signing on Tung Fu. And there's this, we just talked about this idea, and there's this big commotion out at the front desk. And so the CRC, the Community Relations Coordinator, hustled off. She came back 5 minutes later, grinning from ear to ear. She said, Sam, I used that idea. I said, what happened? And she said, there was a woman up there screaming at our front desk staff. And I introduced myself and I said, excuse me, I'm the Customer Relations Coordinator. How can I help you? And she turned on me and she said, you don't know how to run a bookstore. She said, guess what I would have said 5 minutes before? I've been doing this for 20 years.
Right.
You know, and you don't care about it. We love our, no. She said, well, what makes you say that? And she said, I special ordered a book. She said, I drove a half an hour out of my way. I couldn't find parking. I drove back and forth. And now I come and the book's not here. Ah, the real issue. See, when we say what makes you say that, it reveals the real issue, and we can respond to that instead of reacting to the attack.
Yeah.
You know, it's, I'm so sorry you drove out of your way. May I please have your phone number? I'd like to check on the status of the book. When it arrives, we'll either send it to you at our expense, or you can come in knowing that it's waiting for you. You know, almost any time someone makes an accusation, don't deny it, react to it, right? You just prove their point. Now, what makes you say that? Reveal the real issue, respond to that.
Wow. Employers who are dealing with employees, I want to throw something out there.
Yeah.
Because there are probably a lot of women managers or executives who have employees that are difficult to work with for whatever the reason. How would you have them respond in a situation, for instance, if the employee says, you know, you don't know how to talk to me, which is a very typical one.
I love this. And there's a real life example where in one of my public workshops, a very similar situation, a woman said, I've been promoted up the ranks and now I'm supervising former peers. And it's very sensitive because, you know, I bend over backwards to try and be fair. But after about 3 months, one of my best friends, a former peer, came in, sat down at my desk and said, you're a terrible supervisor. She said, guess what I said? That hurts, you know, I put in 60 hours a week, you know, I bend over backwards, I have open on, defend, right? No, she said, what makes you say that? And she said, Bill and Lacey have been coming in late for the last 3 weeks. You haven't done anything about it. Real issue, huh? So come back. What makes you say that?
Right.
Because, see, there's a reason why they're saying it. We want to talk about the reasons why we're saying that, because often we can fix that or correct that if we defend the attack. We're back and forth, yes I do, no you don't, back and forth, and we don't make any tangible progress, right?
Wow, wow. You know, I'm sitting here talking to you, and I'm so fascinated by your level of knowledge on so many different things. And there's still, and I know I'm not going to be able to figure it all out in this hour, because one of the things about me, if you haven't figured it out, is that I am intrigued, or I am very fascinated by people, which is why I do what I do, and I ask lots of questions, always have. But if I'm listening to you talk about, and maybe coaching is part psychology, because it's almost like talking to a psychologist. And again, I go back to what I said about you very early on in the interview, is the fact that you have the ability to assess a situation like that. And that is not a common thing for people to be able to do. What is it, do you think it is about Sam Horn that allows you to be able to do that effectively?
Well, first, thank you. And second, we talked a lot about legacy and about context and our upbringing and how it shaped us. And you know, my dad said something one time. I gave my 8th grade valedictorian address. And so I gave it to him a week beforehand, and I said, what do you think? And he knew I wanted the truth. And he said, it's an okay talk. He said, you just didn't say anything I hadn't heard before. Because a little bird out of the nest. And he said, Sam, if we're going to ask people for their valuable time, it is our responsibility to be original. And I said, Dad, there's nothing new under the sun. And he said, sure there is. He said, do you know what the definition of original is? If people haven't heard it before, it's original.
Wow.
So see, all of my, when I speak and when I write, my criteria is, it can't just make sense. Because if you think, well, I know that, well, that makes sense. That's boring, isn't it? I'm constantly thinking, how can I frame this? How can I craft this? How can I give a real life example of this so that people are hearing it as if for the first time?
Okay.
And it's very pragmatic, so it's actionable. So it's not like, well, yeah, that makes sense. No, it's like, I can do that today. I can do that tomorrow. The next time someone says this, the next time someone does that. So hopefully, every time I'm talk, my criteria is to not be content to be common. Because if it's
not to be content to be common. Wow. I like that. I like that a lot. I'm sorry I interrupted you. I was just trying to make sure I filed that in my head, because it's great, great advice. Take the bully by the horns. Now that one, I was like, okay, what is that one about?
That one, Tung Fu, is really what I found is based on what Gandhi said about be the change you wish to see. And that when we are kind and compassionate and collaborative, 95% of the time, other people will respond in kind. Then I ran into someone that didn't work. And I was completely unprepared for this person who was a bully. And it was a challenge, because I did not want to become a bully, and I did not want to continue to be bullied. And so I wrote a book, because everything I found was pretty much like, understand the bully came from a dysfunctional family, they don't know what they're doing. No. You know, the kinder you are to a bully, the meaner they will be to you.
Yeah,
and,
I've found that too, yeah.
And see, so I think, unfortunately, a lot of people are given pablum advice that makes it worse. And I wanted to know, how can you stay in integrity and deal with someone who is violating people's rights, who is being very cruel and mean? Because we better not wait for the white knight to show up, because we're not going to be rescued. Because bystanders, we know, will often not stand up because they're afraid the bully will turn on them. So here's just one idea from the bully book. And by the way, I've done work with Boeing on bullies and so forth. And kind of no one is taking this approach, which is how you can be nice and strong. You can still be a person of integrity. However, we absolutely must be strong with a bully, because it's the only thing they respect. So here is something that flies in the face, is do not use the word I. Because if we use the word I, which we've been taught to use, I don't like that, I don't deserve to be treated like that, I don't like your language, you know what a bully will say? Tough.
Right, because they're focusing on you
it's
anyway.
It's working. We're letting them know that they're getting exactly what they want. They're bothering us. We actually use the word you. You know, you, back off. You, keep your hands to yourself. You, clean up your language. And I'll give you a very quick example. Years ago, Donald Trump was on the Larry King Show. 5 minutes into the interview, Donald Trump interrupted Larry and said, "By the way, Larry, has anyone ever told you you have really bad breath?" And see, that what just happened is exactly what bullies do. Colette said, the better we feel about ourselves, the fewer times we have to knock someone down in order to feel tall.
Oh, wow.
See, bullies will intentionally say something that knocks you back, that knocks you down, because then they take control, right?
Wow.
And see, we can't believe people would behave that way or act this way, so we're flummoxed, we're on the ropes, we don't know what to do. They have all the power.
What should he have said? I'm curious.
This is, you say, shame on you. Because the word you. Because you see, you put the ball back in the court where it belongs, that person's inappropriate behavior. Or you can use, you know, what I call tongue fu, which is you can waggle your eyebrows and you can look at him and say, does that work with other people? Because do you see how we are not reacting?
Yeah.
We're not getting knocked down, or we're not getting knocked back. We're putting the ball back in the court which is belong, and we're naming the game. And when we name the game, we're essentially letting bullies know, I know what you're doing, and it isn't going to work. Take it somewhere else. In fact, you can even, like Michelle Obama, you can say, Donald, take it somewhere else. Do you see how it just lets them know that was a test, and I am up to your test, so don't even think about trying it here because it's not going to work.
Wow.
That's one of the ways that we deal with bullies.
And on that note, I wish we had more time, but you know what? Those of you who are watching, you can engage this amazing woman on, you know, on any topic, as you can see. You can call her up, talk to her about maybe coaching you or coming to speak to your organization. And I'm going to give you an opportunity now to tell them how to reach out to Sam Horn.
Well, they can go to my website, which is intrigueagency.com. So it's INTRIGUE agency.com. And here's the good news, like my TEDx video is on there for free. It's how to get people's eyebrows up in the first 60 seconds. It's what to say when people say, what do you do? I've got Fast Company articles, Huffington Post articles for free about how to pitch and how to do a TED Talk. My new book, which is on intrigue, is going to be up very soon. And it's essentially how to go anywhere, anytime, create interest, earn respect, and connect with anyone.
Thank you so much and I tell you, I really, really love you a lot, lady, because you represent a lot of the things that I think are important for women to do. And I want to thank you again for coming on and talking to us. And that's going to do it for us this week on Metro Magazine. If you're an amazing woman who has an amazing story that you'd like to share, we would love to hear from you. You can reach us at Bonnie Metro Mag. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the flip side.